I'll begin with a quote from the 1922 Index, also known as ISU's yearbook, which describes the first ISNU homecoming like this. And I quote, "Landmarks, milestones, red letter days, call them what you will, but they are the never to be forgotten times and experiences in the lives of institutions and of individuals. Such a time and such an experience was ISNU's first homecoming, which was celebrated on the 4th and 5th of November of this year, 1921 to 22. Well, it was all over by midnight of Saturday, November 5th, less than 40 hours all told, not allowing for sleep or for study, of which there was little or none. But how much excitement and joy and real happiness was crowded into those few hours? Well, only those who were there will know." End quote. Well, if I was doing math, an ISU alum who participated in homecoming in 1921 would be roughly 113 years old today. So I think it's pretty unlikely that we can find someone to talk to who was there, who could actually tell us of how this homecoming tradition got started. Well, fortunately for us, ISNU alums of yesteryear loved to write. They loved to share stories, and so we're able to solve that mystery of those early homecoming years. Well, apparently, following World War I, during the winter of 1920 to 1921, then President David Felmley visited the East Coast, where he was impressed by the homecoming trend in the Eastern schools. So in order to dispel the feeling that ISU was not progressive, he returned to campus and promptly named a homecoming committee of faculty, alumni, and the football coach. And of course, he allowed them a budget of $75 for expenses. By noon on November 4th of 1921, 700 alums had arrived. Festivities included a jester play, a waffle breakfast, a library open house hosted by none other than Miss Milner, a party in Fell Hall, and of course a dance in the gymnasium. So successful was the affair that it became an annual event. Of course, over the years, some homecoming traditions have died and others have emerged. But there are several homecoming traditions that have been with us from nearly the very beginning. For instance, the parade. What is an ISU homecoming without a parade to officially welcome alumni back to campus? Look closely. Something's missing. Unfortunately, the first E must have been sick that day. Nonetheless, 1923 saw the beginning of what was affectionately known as the Hobo Parade. Spectators lined the streets and the balcony of Old Main to watch. The Hobo Parade continued at ISNU through the Depression years of the 1930s. Of course, floats have always been a part of the parade, from the 40s to the 50s, and from the 60s to today. Dignitaries in the parade have always been important, not only members of the Board of Trustees, but also current presidents, past presidents, oh yeah, and future presidents. Yes, Ronald Reagan was in the 1980 homecoming parade just before he was elected President of the United States. There have always been celebrities, like finalists in the TV show America's Got Talent, NBA basketball stars, and even Lord Stanley. And no ISU homecoming parade is complete without the marching band, shown here in 1957 and 1976, and more recently in 1990 and 2015. Certainly, the Big Red Marching Machine could never be outdone by the acclaimed kazoo band of 1973. All of this, of course, brings us to the main event, Redbird Football. Did you know that in the early days, ISNU football games were played on the south end of the quad near McCormick Hall? Redbird football in the 1940s and 1950s was filled with, quote, thrills, spills, and chills, end quote. And these games were quite a muddy adventure on McCormick Field. So let's fast forward to 1963, when expansion and change were the watchwords of the year, as buildings filled the once empty area of West Campus. Homecoming, 1963, was described like this, quote, the blue sky cover, fresh green grass, impressive red-plumed band ensemble, and red and white football jerseys contrasting with the yellow and purple Central Michigan uniforms, painted a vivid spectacle for all present. But spirit was placed behind the 1963 football players, with the record-breaking crowd present for the first homecoming game on Hancock Field. Homecoming football has now been played on Hancock Field for more than 50 years, and the excitement, well, it continues today. But what fun is homecoming football without the fans? In the 60s, did you know that they were called the Redbird Rooters? This group of nearly 1,000 students was responsible for the Victory Bell, an emblem of pride, which you will see in the homecoming parade tomorrow, and also here at the football game each time the Redbirds score. Well, back in the 1960s, the Redbird Rooters also entertained the crowd with designs that were formed by holding those various colored cards, making the classic I formation, a redbird, or a football player, and of course my personal favorite, I'm pretty sure this is a martini glass with an olive. I guess those fans had a sense of humor. Of course, our Redbird fans today are animated too, and they continue to have a sense of humor. And how about those cheerleaders? From the 1950s and the 1960s to the 1970s and 1980s until today. Of course, the uniforms and the hairstyles may have changed over the years, but their enthusiasm has not. You will continue to find them flying high and raising the Redbird flag. One of the favorite traditions, and of course my favorite tradition, at the homecoming football game continues to be the halftime performance of the marching band. From the ISNU band of 1947 and throughout the years, fans have enjoyed the music and the artistry. Today's Big Red Marching Machine is comprised of 252 musicians, 4 drum majors, 24 color guards, 3 twirlers, and 21 on the dance team, totaling 304 amazing students. It's quite a sight to behold. And in some years, halftime activities at the homecoming game have even included the human field goal, compliments of Gamma Phi Circus. But the #1 ISU homecoming fan is none other than Reggie Redbird. In case you didn't know, we officially became known as the Redbirds back in 1923, when Clifford Pop Horton and Daily Pantograph sports editor Fred Young collaborated to change the university's unofficial nickname away from the Fighting Teachers. Our Redbirds' appearance took on, well, many forms over the years, some of which were not exactly flattering, wouldn't you agree? A more familiar version of our Redbird actually emerged in 1981, when the ISU mascot was named Reggie Redbird by the Junior Redbird Club, naming him after baseball great Reggie Jackson. He's been a fixture at homecoming activities ever since. Well, one thing's for sure, though, as the parade photos through the years will prove, creating a paper mache Redbird, well, it's not an easy task. Nevertheless, we love our Reggie, and you know what they say, imitation is the best form of flattery. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this brief journey through ISU's homecoming history. I'll end like I began, with a quote, but this time from the 1923 index, following the second annual ISNU homecoming in 1922. It asked, and I quote, "Is homecoming worthwhile?" And then answered, "The homecomers, one and all, declared the great pleasure that it was to them, and they returned to their places of work with kindled enthusiasm and with pleasant anticipation of the homecoming in store for them in 1923, end quote. Well, we hope that you too are enjoying your homecoming experience this year, and we hope that you will look forward with pleasant anticipation to joining us again next year for homecoming 2017. Thank you.